I'm recording to the cloud starting now. So, all right, so the recording. I also want to let you know we are having a former student rejoin our class. I just found this out this morning. Lily Huberman will be rejoining.
Good.
She didn't think she could make it today, but she will join in October. Anthea sends her apologies as she has conflicts today, but she will also be part of this class.
Great.
It's without further ado, I want to introduce my friend Eyshe, who is our new leader here. He's also very somewhat even more technologically proficient than me. I'll give him that credit, but I want to let him talk about himself, and then he wants to hear from you as well as what your thoughts are. So without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and let him take it away from here. Eyshe?
Yep. Thank you, Carrie. So it's so wonderful to meet you all, and I'm looking forward to meeting the other two students too soon. I'd actually already spoken over the phone with Jay. I think that was about a month ago or so. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a student in the Germanics department at the University of Chicago, and my focus is on Yiddish, also a bit of German, but I don't like to talk about the German part. Yiddish is my focus. It's what I do. It's what I research. And it's basically the central focus of my life, and I love to teach it. So that is why I'm here with you all. I live in Hyde Park in Chicago. There's I guess not that much else to say about me. I have scattered research interests. My focus is in Yiddish literature, so if you ever want to talk about Yiddish books, Yiddish history, exactly. I'm happy.
Oh wow!
Happy to have conversations at any point, and we'll also talk about that in this class too, of course. But at any rate, what is most interesting to me today is, of course, to get to know you all. So introductions, learning more about you, why you're taking this course, your background with Yiddish. But in particular, I am really curious about your background with languages in general, not just in Yiddish, just kind of general, how you feel about language learning, other languages you might know, how you've approached previous language courses. And then beyond that, I'm really curious to hear what your goals are for this course, because I am the one designing what this course will look like, what direction we take, and I really want to cater that to what you want to get out of the Yiddish language, whether that is conversation, whether that is reading literature, whether that is performing a play, knowing how to recite poetry, whether that's wanting to have fluent conversation, whatever it is. I want to hear about it and what you'd like out of this course, and I can design a curriculum for us that works and that will hopefully cover all of our bases. I was talking with Jay over the phone about how I have a lot of ideas of things we can read together that might be easier than some of the books I think you all might have read in the past, or at least I'm hearing
we were doing a Weinreich book.
The college Yiddish, and then also you might have read Sholem Aleichem, or at least attempted, I think.
Not reading it. I was reading it not in the original.
Sure.
But I could try. Actually, I have some of the books which left from my grandparents, which were published in the former Soviet Union. It's in original Yiddish over Sholem Aleichem book. So I tried. It's very hard.
It is hard,
but I do have a desire.
Okay, good. One thing about those Soviet editions is that my hunch is that if it's a Sholem Aleichem printed in the Soviet Union, then the orthography is going to be different than what's in most Yiddish dictionaries, which will give you a headache for sure.
Yeah, because if you probably, I don't know, do you know it or not? Whereas I also have a book which used by the Yiddish to learn Yiddish by the Russian speakers by Sandler. I don't know. Do you know this book?
I do.
Yeah, it's a well-known book by Sandler, which was published in the Soviet Union somewhere in the 80s, over the last century. And yes, and basically comparing it, you see our orthography is actually different.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might not be reading Soviet editions then in this class, because they might get a little
You have to learn Russian for them.
a little difficulty. But at any rate, whoever would like to go first, maybe Jean, since we're already talking. Like I said, I would love to have you introduce yourself. Tell me anything you'd like to like.
Can I ask you one question about yourself?
Absolutely.
How did you get interested in studying Yiddish literature? You're a young man. Were they from grandparent? Where did that come from?
So I actually began college doing linguistics, and I was focused primarily in Semitic linguistics. So I was doing like Hebrew, Arabic, Akkadian, others. And I quickly was unsatisfied with what I was doing. And that was also around the time where I got to learn more about my family history, in particular, my great-grandfather, who came to the Lower East Side in 1920 from Poland, and was a monolingual Yiddish speaker. And he was also a really interesting man. He was a lifelong communist. He was also a boxer in his youth. He was at the Yiddish speaking boxing rings in New York. At any rate, so I learned more about him and about the Yiddish from my grandmother, and I decided that I wanted to learn as much Yiddish as possible, which then I quickly learned was something that I loved and wanted to continue doing. And then push came to shove, and I decided to stop with all the linguistic stuff and focus on Yiddish literature. And I've been doing that for several years now, and I love it. And it's taken me to a lot of unexpected places, a lot of Yiddish programs, meeting a lot of people I never thought I'd meet. But I'm really happy it's led me here to a classroom, because I really do
So
enjoy.
you are taking a part in Zoom meetings regarding the Yiddish? Oh, because I think your face looks familiar.
Could be.
I never took a part in the Zoom meetings, but I saw the recording of this. But I probably saw you on one of the YouTube videos.
Could be. I'm around. I'm at a lot of different Yiddish related events, so you probably stumbled into my face somewhere.
Yeah, because I feel, I think I saw you somewhere, and it's got.
But I'm happy to talk about that.
Thank you for that.
Of course, I'm happy to talk about that more extensively if you'd like. Maybe another time once I get to know you guys. But to start, just to review, I would love in particular, yes, introductions about yourselves, but really about your goals from this course. Any information you'd like to tell me. I really just want to get to know you all. So maybe Jean, since we were already talking, if you'd like to go first.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine. So, okay. So you want to know about who am I, and basically my involvement with Yiddish, and why I have a desire to take a class for
Yes.
what matter, like summarizing it. Okay, so my name is Gene Katzman, and so basically I'm originally from the former Soviet Union. So basically the first third of my life I spent back over there. So basically, and I was born in Moscow, Russia. So, and it was back in 1971. So, and basically in 1989, like my biography sounds like, 1989 I came here. So basically I came here as a Jewish refugee from a former Soviet Union, because my parents were Soviet refuseniks, Jewish refuseniks, and we were waiting to live the country for quite a while. Since I remember myself, we were always living Soviet Union. So basically in 1989 it happened. And so basically I consider myself, I'm a Jewish, so I have a Jewish mother, Jewish father. So yeah, all my ancestors going through history, we original, we're Jewish. So basically from my father's side we are Litvaks, and from my mother's side we're Ukrainian Jews. So if you're talking about the Yiddish, for that matter. So basically my father's side, the Katzmans, we're speaking the Litvak Yiddish, and you say my mom's side, we speaking like Bessarabian or Galician or whatever you call it, Ukrainian Yiddish, or how it used to be called back in the Soviet Union. So basically with through native speakers. So my grandparents were the last people who used Yiddish as a mama language. So basically used it as a very native tongue. We actually, I still remember growing up in the Soviet Union. I still remember sitting with my grandparents, and we didn't want to know what we are talking about. We were conversing in Yiddish.
Yeah.
So basically, that's I still remember that. And basically, this is how Yiddish came to me. So basically, I heard it since I was born, even though nobody took the effort to teach me the language. But when somebody is using a language, so younger generation wouldn't understand it. So basically, we would think, we would talk between each other, and you being a little kid, eventually you start understanding some of it. And basically, because you live in the environment of the language, and because it, and when we talk, when I was sitting with them, and when they talked between each other, we were using Yiddish predominantly. When they were talking to me, we were speaking Russian, but if we decide to talk to each other, we speak English. And eventually, I didn't speak much, but I could understand.
Sure.
So basically, that's my first exposure to Yiddish came too. And so, and as I'm thinking, like that's why I came to Wisconsin. My grandparents passed away quite a while ago. So back in the last decade of the 20th century. So basically, it's been a while since we're not around. So basically, I don't have an exposure to the language since then. Because my parents, they are not big, as you know, most of the Jews who came from former Soviet Union, younger generation who in the we wouldn't speak the language. However, you have, but still, I still have a language at my heart. As you say, where is a saying? I don't know. I'm pretty versed in English. I'm pretty versed in Russian, but I still, even though Yiddish is not my mother tongue, but I consider it to be my mama language.
Right.
You can say so. So that's probably a reason, because keeping the language. So it's keeping with Jewish, not a Jewish identity, but Jewish, keeping a Jewish soul, like a soul of a pale of settlement. You could say old shtetl soul, which probably I am probably more sentimental now thinking about it, because yes, and it's been my feeling all my life. So even though I don't speak Yiddish well, but I don't think I knowing it. So speaking it pretty badly. Can read it, but I got infected, like infected by Yiddish. So it's in my, maybe I'm not fully sick with it, but I am infected. I don't know. You got my hyperbole of it. So basically, metaphor of it. So basically, that's why I want to learn Yiddish, because I think of it as a part of me. By being Jewish, growing up being born and spent some of my life in the former Soviet Union, even though I was born in Moscow, but my roots comes from to the Pale of settlement. If you think like Ukraine and Belarus and Bessarabia, this is where my roots comes from. We come from a shtetl. So that's why I want to do it. I want to keep my Yiddish soul, Jewish soul alive. So Yiddish is always with me. I'm thinking of it. I don't know. I become maybe too sentimental for that matter.
No, it's all right. I think we all understand the sentimentalities.
Yes, and that's probably why I want to learn it. Yeah, I don't want the language to die. I love Yiddish literature. I love Sholem Aleichem, Freud. I know the history of it, so I know their biographies, periods, and all. I don't know if you're in the Jewish literature. You probably know pleiad of Jewish writers in the former Soviet Union, like David Bergman. You know them. You know like the night of the Jewish poets which were killed in the 1952. Like, and I love it because I'm grasping. I'm trying to reach and learn it. So basically, maybe not in Yiddish, but at least in other languages which I could know more about that, which I wanna do that. And I love languages. I love linguistics, as you said. My relationship with other languages, as you know, because I was born in the former Soviet Union, so Russian is my mother tongue. I came here, English, so I think I know them pretty well.
Okay.
I've been publishing stuff in English and Russian, so Ian, I think, and I know that also I enjoy other languages, as you know, like if you know, like being a Jewish, being born in the Soviet Union, in order to come to the US, you were going through the immigration, you were living in Italy for some reason. So where I would get exposure to the Italian. I like the language too. My knowledge of Italian is not as good as the Russian and English, but at least, for example, when I go there, I'm trying to converse with the people in the very native tongue. So because the history of the language is actually orthography and origin of the words in the different languages and why people saying this and not that. That's been my interest too. So basically, this is my linguistic is my passion too.
That's good. That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, and it's great hearing about your language background too, because that's really helpful for me as a teacher, knowing your experience, not just with individual languages, but difference in language, and also your approach to, in your own mind, to how you deal with translation and learning and all of that stuff. So that's just the range of language you've experienced. That's great to know. Do you have specific goals in mind about this course in particular, things you'd like to do by the end of it?
Probably, I'll be honest, my Yiddish is pretty poor, so basically the first exposure to learning it systematically was in a class which I started here a year ago, and I was also doing it for Duolingo. You know, there's a Duolingo Yiddish edition of that, and I was doing it, and actually I think I'm doing it pretty well for that matter. But still, my goal is to get to the Yiddish, so at least I would be able to converse on a basic level, for example, and understand what other people are saying. And as I told you, I have a passion and love to read Yiddish literature. My final goal is finally at least start reading it in original. That would be good.
Oh, we can definitely do that. So that's great. Okay, so reading the original, you're interested in literature, conversation, and of course we'll go over grammar in this course.
Grammar would be nice.
Yeah, there's always stuff to learn.
Yeah, for sure, because otherwise just knowing lots of words and knowing how to read them, you also have to put the word together into the sentences, but it does not look stupid.
Yeah, and I'm also a big believer in while regimented ruled grammar is helpful in certain cases, I'm also a big believer in learning grammar and vocabulary through engagement, say with literature, audio recordings, movies, whatever it may be. Just because, at least in my experience with students and also for myself, it's much easier to remember things when we have memories and cultural experiences associated with them, more so than lists in a book. Although the lists in a book will be available for those who they're helpful for, of course. All right. Thank you so much, Jean.
Not a problem. Thank you.
It's great to meet you, sehr angenehm. And Gloria, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, hi. So anyway, my background was that my parents were Holocaust survivors from Poland. One was from Parchev, which was in the Lublin district, and my mother was from Yaroslavl, which was the eastern part of Poland. It kind of was Austrian Empire for a while. It was, some people called it the Galiciana place. and they both survived by fleeing to Russia.
Mhm.
They didn't know each other. My father is a sole individual. He fled because he was in the Polish army. So he kind of knew, actually the cavalry, that he was in danger. So he left to Russia. And my mother and her mother, my grandmother, and two brothers also were arrested in the Soviet Union and put in prisons in the Soviet Union there. And then in I believe around 41, when Germany attacked Russia,
Mhm.
the Russians decided to let the Jews go, and they both decided to go to Uzbekistan, Tashkent,
Right.
because they heard it was warm. And I guess they took a train there. My father was very sick, both. Anyway, they worked there sort of in the black market. There was a thing to make money there, and they met and they got married there. And then at the end of the war, 1945, they traveled back. My father had an uncle here in Chicago that come in the 1920s.
Mhm.
First, they stopped at my father's town and realized everybody had been killed, his sisters, his parents, grandparents, nieces, nephews. And so my mother was pregnant with my brother. They went on to Berlin, Germany. They had to be smuggled into Germany because they had no passport, visa. That's another story. But they made it into Germany, Berlin, where my brother was born. And then in 1946, and I was born in 1948 in Berlin. And they waited till 1950. They not waited to get their papers. And in 1950, they came to Chicago.
Mhm.
So we lived in the west side of Chicago. My parents, you talked about, they talked Polish when they didn't want me to know. So I never picked up Polish, but they always talked Yiddish
Mhm.
to me. And my grandmother, Regina, who came in 1950 and died in 65, only spoke Yiddish, Polish and Yiddish, never spoke English. So the only way I could talk to her was in Yiddish. And I really believe, since I came here when I was about 2 years old, 2.5, the Yiddish probably was my first language
Mhm.
because I can understand it really well.
Yeah.
But over the years, I haven't spoken it. So my goal in this class, therefore, is to rekindle so I could speak Yiddish comfortably. I mean, I could speak Yiddish if I had to. I know I had met older relatives in Israel and in Austria, and I was able to converse. They didn't speak any English, and I spoke Yiddish with them. I was able to converse with them, but I thought I spoke what's called a tzabachane Yiddish, very bad. But I can understand it because my father used to always get the Yiddish forewords
Mhm.
and sat there and read it in the kitchen. He used to read the letters, the Bindle brief, and he used to read it to us all the time. So I really can understand it a lot. But my goal is to be able to speak it. Now, also, my goal would be reading is very difficult for me, but that is a goal because it's real. You learn a lot from the written print too. So what we did the last few years in reading was very valuable to me because I think it picked up a lot of things and it helped me actually speak at the grammar and everything like that.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
that's my goals. As far as language, I have to tell you, I'm very, very bad at language.
Okay.
I'm a math person. I taught math in high school. So language I always found difficult. In high school, I took French. I don't speak French. In college, I took German because I thought that would be easy for me. And it was a little bit easy, but it was different.
Yeah, for sure.
And then as an adult, I tried to learn Spanish.
Okay.
And I learned it, but I forgot everything. So languages come very difficult for me. So Yiddish is my only probably other language that I could probably speak.
Okay.
So that's my story and my goals for that. So
Schönen Dank. Schönen Dank. Es ist gewesen so easy zu
Oh.
hören wegen dein Lebensgeschichte und euch wegen deiner Zielen mit der Sprache. Dank.
Ja, dank.
Und
Ich verstehe, was du gesagt. Ich
Ja.
kenne Ämteren.
warte, aber es ist schön.
Warte.
Es ist schön,
So.
ja.
Ja.
Und was habe ich gewollt sagen? Ich habe verschrieben ein paar Sachen, was du hast gesagt. Ich soll gedenken wegen
Gut.
die Zielen und was wir wollen tun.
Ja.
Und ich bin sehr, sehr sicher,
Mhm.
als wir kennen der Griechen die Ziele, was du hast wegen Jiddisch, wegen der fließige Schmutz und euch wegen Literatur und das Lernen und die genießte Sprache. Ich meine,
Oh, sehr gut, sehr gut. Und was ist euch geworden ist, ich habe den Bruder, was ist geboren in Berlin, very tragically, he died when he was 40, and he left us 2 children, one son who was 6.5, and geworden sehr, sehr fromm. Gegangen zu Israel, gehassene, jetzt hat 8 Kinder. And they moved back to New York. The wife's parents are in New Jersey. And es ist sehr interessant, because the Kinder gehen zu a yeshiva nicht in Muncie, but by Muncie, by Monroe. And sie reden Yiddish jetzt in the classroom. So it's kind of interessant. So the Kinder reden Yiddish. So I can a bisschen reden Yiddish, but sei in the Stieb alle reden English. Reden English in the Stieb, but Yiddish in the shul.
Aber verständlicherweise. Ja, tatsächlich. Und ich habe etwas geschrieben in Schmueskestel. Schmueskestel, that's the chat box. Schmueskestel. Das heißt, sie haben sich übergeklitten zurück in New York. Ja? Überkleiden sich, das heißt to move places or countries. Ja, sie haben sich übergeklitten.
Oh, übergekommen heißt man moved, to gemoved. Zurück to the United States.
Gut.
Okay.
Ja. Und also schönen Dank. Ja, und das ist, wir wollen ja haben Zeit zu reden wegen unserer Leben. Sicher wollen wir das haben. Ich bin euch interessiert zu hören von unser Jay. Jay, would you like to also introduce yourself? I know we've done a little introductions, but just if you could repeat again.
Erster Zach. Es ist eine große Mechaya zu hören, es sagt Yiddish, es sagt Mameloschen hier heint.
Yeah.
With that, I'll lapse into English for a quick background. My family all originates in Bessarabia, which I sometimes describe Riley as the greater metropolitan Kishinev area.
That's really funny. Have you heard this? There's a common saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jay.
You can always interrupt to teach something. What were you going to say?
Have you heard this? There's this very common saying in Yiddish. It's probably common in English too, although I haven't heard it. If you want to say something is really far away, or like you don't know where it is, or it's like
nach Kishinev.
Yes, it's in Kishinev. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and every time I heard that, I would look at people and say, "That's my ancestral stomping grounds." Give it a little respect. I grew up with that in this country.
They would say that because it's in Kishinev. Because if you look at the map of the Russian Empire and you see the Kishinev there, it's the most western frontier of Russia. So basically, after that, Russia will be other country, but Austro-Hungary, Romania, and so on would start. But Kishinev would be the most western point.
Okay. But yeah, I heard that all the time growing up, that, and anybody who was sort of a bumpkin or from some rural area, or you were talking about some remote place, they would say it's, in Kishinev or near Kishinev or something. Anyway, with all of that in mind, my family ancestors on all sides got here in the 1890s in the very early 1900s, and settled on the west side of Chicago in the old Maxwell Street area. And by the time I was born, my grandparents had moved to South Shore. They had a nice apartment. And I just sort of got exposed to Yiddish without anybody ever really trying to speak it to me directly. It was just sort of in the background. Vocabulary and words got batted around. And there was certainly a tendency among American Jews to resort to a Yiddish term if you couldn't find the right English synonym. So needless to say, this or that politician was a schlemiel or worse.
Sure.
That was it. It was just kind of part of the atmosphere. And then in the late 1980s, when Russia began with the glasnost and perestroika to allow Jews to emigrate. By that time, I was living in Lakeview and a member of Anshe Sholem B'nai Yisrael. And a lot of the Russians gravitated there because it was a traditional Orthodox service. None of them spoke any English. I speak no Russian. And I found out, just sort of hanging out at Kiddush with these people, that sometimes they could pick up the general sense of what they were talking about. It was just kind of in me, And so then I started making a real effort to speak with them, to help them feel welcome, and to teach myself as well. And certainly felt a tremendous connection to Yiddishkite through the Yiddish language. It almost sounds like a redundancy, connection to Yiddishkite through Yiddish. I mean, how else could it be? I got to a point where after 3 or 4 years, I could actually have a kind of simplistic conversation on most topics with some of these people. It was very rewarding. Then we moved to Lincolnwood, and I just didn't have opportunities to speak or be exposed. I kept up some interest. I have a Yiddish translation of Winnie the Pooh, and I would sort of try to stay interested in it. But my goals actually is to sort of revive my speaking ability. Languages are for talking, for starters. They're also for reading, and maybe also for other things. But so my goal is conversational. And interestingly, there is in Gloria, I don't know if you know Sam Schuster, who's been coming to the weekly Chakras Minyonim at Lube Synagogue. Sam's an interesting guy because his family are Polish Jews, but they escaped to Mexico. And he grew up in Mexico City, but he's very fluent in Yiddish. And he and I sometimes have these discussions in which he speaks a proper Mamaloshin and I speak a pidgin Yiddish or something. But there are people out there, people like you, Gloria. Your background is just fascinating, and the language should continue to have a vitality. And I connect to it for reasons I can't even fully articulate, but that's why I'm studying. And
Great.
Want to welcome you, by the way, and thank you for your willingness to take on a class like this. And I guess the one thing I would add, as if I haven't said enough, is the more talking we do, the better. I like listening to you explain to Gloria about writing and the things you're talking about, and that's just a helpful part of the learning process for me.
Sehr schön.
I do. I have to second what Jay said. I very much enjoyed your Yiddish, the way you speak it. I can understand it. It's so.
Chlor.
Yeah, very good.
Gut,
Very
dank. Ja,
Ja,
sie freut mich zu reden nach Mameluschen. Das heißt, sie wird nicht sein, kein Problem bei mir zu reden nach Jiddisch. Oi, wie wilt es? Ja, das heißt, thank you, schönen Dank, Jay.
Nicht so verwas.
Und ich gedenk euch, was du hast gesagt, wegen deiner Zielen, wenn wir haben gerät mit der Chodesh zurück. Das heißt, I remember what you mentioned when we were also talking over the phone, and I have a really good list here, I think, of some ideas about where we can take this course and what I'd like to do with it. I'll start with first by saying that speaking Yiddish is, I would love to. I mean, I'm always happy to speak in Yiddish. I just want to make sure we're all at the same level of understanding. So what I'll probably do is I will probably speak in Yiddish to you all very often, if not the majority of the course, and expect to not understand things. That is completely okay, completely normal. Maybe in Gloria's case, someone who has had so much Yiddish exposure, maybe you'll understand everything. But for Jean or Jay, if things are unclear, totally fine.
I went through that with all the Russian immigrants
Good.
I was talking about.
Good.
I would stand there and not understand a word for 4 sentences and then understand word for word the next 2 sentences.
Sure.
I just figure that's part of the process. So
Absolutely.
thank you for the warning, but don't worry about it.
I just say this because I absolutely agree. It is a part of the process, and I think part of reaching a better level of conversation is being exposed as much as possible to the spoken language. So I'm definitely going to do that for you all as much as I can. And of course, if you're ever just wanting to speak Yiddish outside of class times, I'm happy to do that too. I mean, I'm always down to have a
Call you
conversation
up and speak Yiddish to you.
I'm totally, listen, you joke, but I would be happy with that. So at any rate, so I can definitely do that, and we can definitely practice conversation. I think when we have our weekly meetings, I'll probably make you all tell me things in Yiddish to start to get us all ready and warmed up. And I'm really happy to hear, for one, Gloria, that you're a math person, because I think, fortunately, math people have a great time when it comes to language learning if they're taught right, because language and linguistics can definitely be thought of as equations and rules and ways of formulating thought and speech that sound much more mathematic than they do, I think, kind of linguistic or cultural, literary, whatever it is. So I'm happy.
People with math, a lot of people, kids, students, they have kind of a roadblock, and they get nervous around math. And that's how I feel about language.
Mhm.
Other than Yiddish, I'm more comfortable with, but that's how I feel. I feel like when I'm speaking a foreign language, it's just like coming out really badly to somebody that's
Oh,
listening.
but you can relate basically the math formula, the math
Right, I could.
set of mind, because language from myself, because I'm also a math person. I do have a degree in statistics. My bachelor degree is in statistics. My master's in computer science. So
Okay,
I've
good.
been a programmer for, God knows, for the last 25 years, quarter of a century. So you could say I do have a math set of mind. And my understanding, sometimes I'm thinking of language and why I like the languages, because when you think of language and when you think of the math and the formulas, you actually set a series of formulas by speaking the language. So that's my understanding. That's where you can put where languages and the math comes together.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, so from my perspective, I'm not a math person, but I do love, and I have created a lot of kind of coherent rules and tips and ways of thinking about Yiddish grammar that have helped me, and I'm excited to pass those along, because I think actually for math-minded brains, I think it'll actually be really helpful.
Makes sense.
I'm looking forward to that. So right now I'm going to, so first, just to say this again, a warning, lots of Yiddish coming from me. I will always make sure you guys understand after, but kind of try to listen and enjoy and kind of just be immersed in the sound, and then understanding will come later. I'm excited to work on conversation with you all, and that's not a problem. The third thing,
Say is like good.
Yeah.
Sagt Pamela.
In English, Pamelech.
Pamelech. Yeah, sagt Pamelech auf Yiddish.
Slow.
Du willst, dass ich auf Yiddish jetzt? Ja?
Ja.
Okay, gut. Das heißt, die erste Sache ist, ich will reden Jiddisch mit euch. Ja, und da gibt sich nicht, sorgt sich nicht, das heißt, als ob du verstehst nicht, ob ihr versteht nicht, sorgt sich nicht, ihr werdet ja verstehen, wenn wir reden wegen dem und wenn wir kommen zu einer Verständlichkeit zwischen uns später. Das heißt es, ob ich sage etwas in Jiddisch und du verstehst nicht, tracht wegen dem Klang, tracht wegen dem Wort und ich will es übersetzen später für euch, damit ihr sollt verstehen.
Was,
Ja.
was heißt Klang?
Klang, der Klang, das heißt the sound of something.
Oh,
Der
Klang is the
Klang.
sound.
Oh, like a
Ja, Klang.
clang from a ringer, yeah.
Warte, und das
Oh, the
Maskuline,
sound, Klang.
der Klang, Plural, die Klangen, die
Mm.
Klangen, der Klang, die Klangen. Der Klang von einem Wort, der Klang von einem Lied, der Klang von Musik, der Klang von einem Film, alles ist Klang. Ja, gut.
Verstanden.
Das ist die erste Sache. Also ich will ja reden Jiddisch mit euch. Kein Sorge nicht. Die zweite Sache ist, als wir wollen ja praktizieren unser Schmues auf Jiddisch, unser Schmues Möglichkeit auf Jiddisch. Das heißt, wie soll man reden, wie soll man antworten auf Fragen, wie soll man stellt sich vor. Ja, wir wollen tun, alles, was ihr darft, zu reden auf Jiddisch. Die dritte Sache ist, als wir wollen euch lernen. Und ich halte eine Sache von Lernen. Und das ist nicht zu lieb dem, was ich bin ein Student von Literatur, es ist zu lieb dem, was ich meine, als Literatur, Romanen, Bücher, die geschriebene Sprache, gibt uns eine Möglichkeit zu sehen, nicht nur die grammatische Klolim, was wir haben sich gelernt in Klasse, aber euch, wie es soll die Sprache wird genutzt in praktische und realistische Mascholim. Ja, das heißt, sie gibt uns zu verstehen, wie soll die Sprache ist gerät geworden, geschrieben geworden und genutzt geworden, wie lebendige und wie kulturelle und wie eine genutzte Sache. Ja, ihr versteht, was ich habe gesagt?
Ja, ich verstehe.
Gut. Gut, das heißt, wir wollen ja lernen. Und das wird sein gut. Also ich meine, das wird uns helfen. Und ja, die vierte Sache ist, das heißt, über zu Chazaren. Die erste Sache, ich will ja reden auf Jiddisch. Zweite Sache, wir wollen ja schmusen, ja, zu helfen mit unseren Schmusmöglichkeiten. Die dritte Sache ist, wir wollen ja lernen. Ich will ja geben Literatur, wir wollen ja lernen in Klasse. Die vierte Sache ist, wir wollen ja praktizieren euch mit Audiorekordierungen. Ja, das heißt Audiorekordierungen. Das ist ein gutes Wort. Audio Recordings.
Ah, okay.
Audiorekordierungen. Also wie das? Audiorekordierungen.
Oh, okay.
Gut, Junge.
Das heißt Interviews. Ja, man sagt Interview auf Jiddisch, ja. Das heißt Interviews, das heißt Efsche Lieder, ja, Redes, ja, das heißt digitalisierte und rekordierte Redes von berühmten jiddischen Schreibern, die man so hören, wie soll die Sprache, wie soll sie haben geredet Jiddisch und andere Sachen. Nu, das heißt es, wir wollen haben 4 Teilen in dem Kurs. Ja, ein Teil von mein Jiddisch, wo ich gebe euch zu verstehen, wie so Jiddisch wird geredet in mein Loschen, die ihr sollt praktizieren und hören, mein Jiddisch. Zweite Teil, wir wollen ja arbeiten auf unser Schmues, ja, wie soll im Schmues. Dritte Sache, wir wollen ja lernen ein bisschen Literatur für uns, das wird sein gut. Und die vierte Sache, wir wollen ja haben kulturelle Unionen für uns, was kommen von Rekordierungen, Redes, Lieder, ich weiß nicht. Das ist, was ich...
YouTube.
Auf
YouTube.
Auf YouTube, warte. Ja, gut. Und ich meine, das ist, was ich bin, das ist, was ich habe, bekavonnen. Ja? Ihr versteht Bikavone? Was heißt Bikavone?
Kavona is mental intention.
Gut.
This is
Ja.
kavana like you use in Hebrew,
Ja,
like you would talk about you daven with kavana.
Pinkliche Soll. Punkte Soll.
Yeah.
Ja. Bikavone
Okay.
haben oder Kavone haben heißt to have intention for or to intend to do something.
Right.
Ja. Das heißt es, wir können sagen, Bikavone wie, wir können sagen Bikavone wie in Adverb. Ja, he did something intentionally.
Right.
Hat etwas gemacht Bikavone. He did it intentionally. Bikavone. Or we can use it as a verb to say I intend to do something. Ich hab Kavone zu tun.
Kavana zu reden gut.
Aber gut, oder so. Gut, und du hast es gut getan. Du hast es richtig getan. Du hast gut geredet. Ja,
Danke.
ich hab gewonnen zu tun etwas. Wir können euch sagen, ich bin big gewonnen. Das heißt, I am of the intention.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Ich bin big gewonnen. I am of the intention. Is
Ich
kind
bin
of ich bin big gewonnen. Und gib acht. This word,
I'm
gewonnen.
I'm missing something. When you go through this with ich bin, was there a little preposition after bin and before kavana? Was it another word?
Sure. So I'm writing it here in the chat, and usually I'll have a whiteboard that I'll write on too. I just don't have that with me today.
Okay.
But there is a little preposition in Yiddish. It's just like in Hebrew. It's the b. It's the b that's right before it. That's to or of
kavana.
something. Bikavona.
Okay.
Exactly.
Kavone.
So pay attention to this word. Di kavone. It's a Hebrew. It's a Lashon Kodesh word.
Yeah.
Yes. So of course it's written differently than our
Yeah,
Yiddish.
I see. It's written in Hebrew.
Exactly. And it's pronounced like this. Kavone.
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 That's just the Yiddishized version of kavana.
It's
Kavone. Like milchama, milchame.
Yeah, it's Ashkenazi Hebrew. Yeah, that's where it comes
Right.
from. Yeah.
Right.
But you're right, it is Yiddishized because it's not technically.
Oh, because you have it zwei Waf there for it.
So the reason there's two Volken
Yeah.
is because in classical Hebrew it's written with one, but in modern Yiddish it's preferred to write with two.
Yeah, I see.
Kavone.
In the
That's why
chat,
so when I saw with zwei Waf, I see it's not completely Hebrew. It's Yiddish bitten.
Yeah.
in the chat, could you go, because I'm just looking at the chat now, the first sentence,
Mhm.
could you read the first sentence that you wrote to everyone? Sie haben sie.
Yo, so that was the sentence I was talking about earlier. They moved back to New York. Sie haben sich
This is what you were saying.
Oh, that's what you,
Yeah.
and you had written it in your chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sie
Sie haben sich
sie.
übergeklebt zurück
Okay.
in New York. Ja.
Ah,
Das heißt, sie haben sich überkleiden. Ja, wir können sagen, so überkleiden sich heißt to move.
mhm.
Also überziehen sich, which is the same meaning, meaning to move. They both mean the same thing. In the past participle, that means in the past tense, in Yiddish, überkleiden becomes übergekleiden, gekleiden, exactly.
Übergekleiden,
Überziehen becomes übergezogen.
übergezogen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is there some display of writing I should be getting here?
Chat?
Yes. Apologies, Jay. There's a chat box at the bottom. It says chat at the bottom of your screen. Do you see that by any chance?
I do.
Yeah, that should pull up the writing.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Chat. Yeah, I just pulled it up right before when you said.
Yeah, so
At
you're
the
doing it
last
for the whole
line.
class. So basically, this is what I am going. I just was wondering, is it a way when we're going to get a recording of it? is this stuff gonna be get lost? We are not gonna see it. Yeah, so we.
Yeah, the chat, if you'd like to save the chat, Gene,
Yeah.
if you have the chat box up, you can press the 3 dots and press save chat. And it'll-
Oh,
All
it
right.
should-
Oh,
So-
yeah.
see it. Yes,
And
I
this,
see it now.
this starts with vos tustu and vos
Yep. Mhm.
maxtu.
And that was what, so, that
And
was
it's
what,
gonna save it on my hard drive or what?
it should, you can change your settings. We can talk about it later too.
Okay, not a
so
problem.
I can
We're
also
not in
write-
a computer class. It's in
Yeah.
Yiddish.
I can also write this up and send it in an email after. This
Mhm.
wasn't what so
Here.
this is just stuff that comes to mind. At any rate, this word kavona is important. It means intention, to intend to do something, and you can use it in a myriad of ways. The last thing I'll do to kind of to talk about this word kavona is we can say bekivendik.
Even dick.
Bekivendik. This is a great word. Bekivendik. It means intentionally. Intentionally.
Right.
Bekivendik. Bekivendik. And it's written with the Loshen Kodesh, but it's pronounced Bekiven. It's pronounced like this. Bekivendik. Bekivendik.
Even dick.
At any rate, you don't need to memorize these things. These are just stuff that comes up.
It's intentionally?
Sorry,
Because
Gene?
you said it's intentionally.
Intentionally, exactly.
Because I
Intentionally.
was looking at what Google Translate, it told me consciously.
Yeah, well-
Yeah,
Google Translate for Yiddish is unfortunately very poor. It Bekivendik means intentionally. It means you have an intention to do something.
mhm.
At any rate, at the beginning of the chat, that was because I asked Gene, was machst du? And we were talking about the difference between was machst du and was tust du. Does anyone know the difference between was machst du and was
No.
tust?
Well, one is asking for an activity. What are you doing? Toots do. The other, I think, is asking more like a general state. How are you do? How are you?
That's exactly
So-
right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Was machst du is how are you? Was tust du is what are you doing? You know, that's
Right.
exactly right. Good. And so throughout these lessons, I will make use of the chat and also my whiteboard, which is my tablet, and I'll probably split screen sometimes. I'll make use of both those to show you what I'm talking about visually. So yeah, definitely keep your eye towards the chat, and also when I have my tablet back, what I write on there. But that'll be right in front of you on your screen, so you won't have to do much work for that. And feel free to take notes. Also, one thing I want to say about these courses, these classes that we're going to have together in general, please feel free to add anything you'd like to say as the class goes on, whether that's a question you have, a helpful bit of information, especially if it has to do with how you're approaching this specific idea, because I think we all benefit from hearing how everyone thinks about an issue and a problem or a rule. And so I really want these classes to function more like a guided conversation with me doing the guiding about what things we need to hit with Yiddish related subjects, but really with us talking and learning how to speak Yiddish better together, is what I'm looking forward to. And often, because I love teaching grammar, it's one of my favorite things, I will go into these little small tangents about different words. So you'll have to forgive that, but you're welcome to take notes. There's never any need to memorize if I go off in one of these tangents.
No,
about
grammar is cool. I like it.
Good, good. So anyway, that's kind of an introduction to this word kavona. So intention, you know. Ich hab kavona, ich hab es getan bikavona. I did it purposely, you know. And then also we have these two words, ibe kleipen sich and ibe ziehen sich, and they both mean to move.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's a whole theology surrounding kavana in Hebrew as a state of mind that should accompany tefillah or prayer. And having appropriate kavana, whether it's, and it's not necessarily an intention to do something, maybe just be a sense of yiras shemayim, awe, or something like that. It gets a lot of rabbinic attention. And I find it interesting that in Yiddish, there's this, I think, broader kind of application that gets sort of away from the religious contexts in which I'm used to hearing that word, and into what you've described. So it's very helpful and very interesting.
There's a great phrase in Yiddish that is usually applied to translated, like translations or Yiddish books, or really just Yiddish publishing in general. And it goes like, verteidigt und verbessert. verteidigt und verbessert. Verteidigt,
Translated and forgotten.
verbessert heißt improved. Improved. So
Oh.
I will end on this before we go. So teich is a really important word in Yiddish, and it's both a noun, der teich, and it's also a verb, teichen.
Yeah.
Does anyone know etymologically where this word comes from, teich?
Yeah, I think I do.
Where does it come from?
Comes from Deutsch.
It
And
does.
the idea is that
Yes.
you turn it into a vernacular language. So,
Correct.
I mean, I remember sitting in a Beth Midrash where somebody got up from Israel and gave a speech in Hebrew, and
Mhm.
somebody in the back said, "You better teach."
Exactly. So that's exactly what it means, because early in Yiddish history, Yiddish was referred to in Middle High German and in Old Yiddish as something that was called Yiddishkite, or Jewish
Oh.
German.
German.
Yiddishkite, Jewish German. You know, and what happened is it eventually the Teich dropped off and it stayed Yiddish, Jewish. You know, so when you were talking about kavona becoming something kind of vernacularized or something more common, it's been verteidigt. No, it is truly
Uh-huh.
verteidigt, right? And Efshe verbessert.
And therefore improved.
Yeah,
For
let's
better.
face it. Yeah.
Made better.
Good.
Yeah.
So at any rate, you can also ask for the meaning of something. Was ist der Teich? Was ist der Teich? And that means not only what is the meaning, but it can also mean what's your interpretation? Was ist der Teich? Because the act of translation, Yiddish history, is also an interpretive thing, right? Because you're interpreting it to give it in Yiddish. So at any rate, I'm really excited to work with you all. The last thing I want to ask before we go is, are there specific, when you think about Yiddish grammar or your understanding of the language, I know that you guys have worked through college Yiddish with Hela. If you had to give me one or two topics in Yiddish grammar that you feel that are still hard for you, say whether it's knowing how to make a past participle, how to do the past tense, whether it's tenses in general, future, past, conditional, which is actually a mood, but it's neither here nor there.
Well, I'll tell you, this is very basic, but I still get very confused with do, dear, you know,
Yeah.
you or you in the formal, you in the, you know.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes when you use them or there, so basically, stuff like
They're
that.
very
because
basic.
With it them, I'm usually getting confused.
These things may sound basic, but these are among the more difficult parts about the Yiddish language, and it's really important that we're all at a similar baseline when it comes to what these words mean, because they are the most common words in the language. So, schäm sich nicht. Ja, schäm sich nicht. Wir wollen ja reden wegen dem. So pronouns and articles, we'll definitely review that for our first class. Are there any other topics that right away you're thinking, oh, I really hope Eyshe covers that?
I just never seem to know when I learn a word what the gender is.
Okay.
And it helps, of course, if somebody says D or der, then I'm able to, I can pick it up from that context, but.
Okay. That makes sense.
And maybe also, and this again seems kind of basic, is the Yiddish alphabet.
Okay.
And then nitz a letter at the end and the beginning. So.
But I also think
the English, the Yiddish,
sorry, Gloria.
the Yiddish alphabet gone into the sounds and where they apply, and sometimes you put together more than one Yiddish alphabet together and the sound is different. And I've been trying to work on that too,
Okay.
you know, the reading of it.
Yeah.
And
That's
one thing regarding the alphabet. When you go like a Yiddish alphabet would be fine, but sometimes I'm getting a problem when I'm getting the Hebrew words in Yiddish, and that's make me worried because I would never know how I would read it. So so basically, if we could if you could summarize it so a certain way, so it would make it easier to
Okay.
read the Hebrew word in Yiddish. So basically, because
Okay.
sometimes I wouldn't know how to say it by looking at it. I could
Absolutely.
see it when I see it. So basically,
That makes
Plus,
sense.
plus in your chat, like for example, all the words that you have,
Mhm.
for me, it would be very helpful to see it in English or transliteration.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting here trying to figure out what these Yiddish words are saying, and maybe at the time I remembered it, maybe not.
No
So
worries. That makes sense. Yeah. So okay. So just to go through these real fast, what I'll probably do is I'll start with some transliterations, but I do want to start weaning you guys off of the
the
translation.
translation,
So yeah. So we'll as we review. So we're definitely going to review the alphabet, just kind of general rules and tips, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And as we do that, I will definitely give transliterations, and I'll continue to do that. But then I'll wean us off eventually.
yes, eventually, yeah.
And
Yeah,
Right.
and
Transliteration is a crutch, basically. You know, we have to we have to use it.
about the Hebrew component. So I don't speak Hebrew. Like I really I did linguistics, like I know grammar, but I don't know Hebrew. All the Hebrew I know comes from my Yiddish, and I can definitely help with patterns and how to think about the Hebrew component.
Yes, that would be.
But I just want you to know that you're not alone. We're actually in similar boats. It's when I started learning Yiddish, it was incredibly intimidating seeing all of these words that I never heard before, or I didn't know how to pronounce, especially even if I did know how to pronounce them, I didn't know the Yiddish way of pronouncing them. So that was kind of an extra difficulty. So we'll definitely review that. I have it marked down. And then about pronouns, articles, and gender, that stuff's I love that stuff. So I love teaching it. So I'm excited to teach that with you all, because I have some tips in here that I'm excited to talk about. Before we go, is there any other points of grammar or issues or questions that you have that you want me to know as I start planning what we're going to do together?
what's the gender for kavone in
D,
Yiddish?
it's feminine. D kavone. It's
D kavone. Okay.
so, D kavone.
Anytime you introduce a noun,
Absolutely.
it would be very valuable to have a der, a d, or a dos.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And-
I do try to do that with this. Apologies for not including it with kavone. A
But you,
tip.
der
Mhm.
teich, you did it there.
Yeah.
Kavana,
With kavone, a
Kavana.
tip. So any Hebrew, and those say Loshen Kodesh, holy language.
Yeah.
Any Loshen Kodesh word that ends in a hey is going to be feminine.
Oh, I see. That's good.
So di kavone, we know is feminine because it ends in a hey. And that actually does map on to the gender system in Hebrew. If you know,
Yes,
I don't know Hebrew. So, I had to learn this myself, but
it's a perfect isomorphism.
exactly. So that should be helpful for gender issues in Hebrew, maybe for you, Jay, but for other stuff, absolutely, yeah. So we know di kavona because of the hey. Any other questions or concerns or just things you would like me to know before I start planning?
No, I
No?
think I'm good for right now.
Great.
Wo wir schmusen mehr.
Ja, warte, wir wollen ja schmusen. Schönem Dank für kommen.
Yeah, I get the
And I hope this wasn't too much already.
Oh,
No, it's good. It's good.
Sehr
I
interessant.
love it.
Shane Dank, and we're gonna dive into this. I'm really excited for our first class, and it was wonderful to meet you. And if you need to get in contact with me, I'm happy to give you my email, because I'm happy to talk about Yiddish at any time, or also just if you have questions or concerns that pop up, feel free.
Maybe Carrie could circulate your email to.
Yeah, I will send it.
class.
When the recording goes out tomorrow, because I'm going to send it before the holiday.
Okay.
I will send out his contact information.
Great.
And then also
Shannon Bach
our
from there.
contact information.
I'll give Eyshe a class roster.
Okay.
Great.
That's between him and me, but he'll have it.
Okay. Great.
Eyshe, Das ist dann a Mechaya, a Mechaya.
And
Would
when
be
is the
on-
next
And a
class?
Shannon
That's what
Don
I'm pulling up
Kadir.
for you right now. So because of the high holidays, the next class will be on Chol Moed Sukkot, which is October 13th.
Hold on.
Oh, one last question for you guys. Would anyone be interested if you okay, I know it's a little bit of a wait before our first class. Would anyone be interested in some review work activities I could send you? If you don't want to do work, by all means, don't do work during the holidays. But if
Oh,
you
yeah,
if
I would enjoy it. Yeah.
you would like that? Okay. Yeah, okay, then you
I
know what?
would.
I'll send some stuff over to Carrie, and if you feel like doing it, please do. I think it'll make you guys feel a bit more confident going into the first class. But if not, we'll also review it the first day. So don't.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
All right, hey chef, you can hang back just a little bit, but I'm
Yep.
going to stop the recording here. Everybody, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.